I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will take a few minutes to introduce our panelists here. And before that, as we close out on this crazy year, we certainly have a lot to reflect on. And some of the things being in the nonprofit world that some questions that we all have in our minds are, what are the strategies that are still working? What are the strategies that will make sense now? And how do we turn this crisis into an opportunity to not only bounce back, but to be better positioned to respond to community needs in the next year? So today, during this panel, our panelists will address some of these questions. And our goal today is to help you emerge stronger and better equipped to create resilient pathways personally and for your organizations. So with that, I would like to introduce our panelists. Most of you have crossed paths with them or already know them very well. So I'll keep the introductions short. Russ Stoddard is the founder and CEO of Oliver Russell, a Boise-based social impact agency that builds brands for purpose-driven companies. He is an award-winning B Corp leader working at the confluence of business and social responsibility. During the pandemic, Russ actually founded a nonprofit in addition to all the awesome things he's already doing called the City of Good. He has also founded Works Progress Administration while serving as an advisor to numerous social enterprise startups, including Goodwill, ShareTag, and Evox Omnimedia. He is the author of the Amazon bestseller, Rise Up, How to Build a Socially Conscious Company, and a frequent contributor to sustainable brands, Conscious Company Media, Be the Change, and Real Leaders. Russ also teaches educational courses on transformative new business models. Welcome, Russ.
Thanks, great to be here.
Next, I'm going to introduce Dr. Mindi Anderson. Dr. Mindi Anderson has a long-standing reputation in developing, growing, and leading dynamic teams within her military, civilian, and nonprofit career. She is the executive director of the Idaho Veteran Chamber of Commerce and interim president of the Cascade Fire Community Fund. As a chief motivational officer and founder of Maximize Solutions, consulting and coaching, she shares her experience, knowledge, and passion to promote a healthy culture and provide clients with business strategy solutions to help them scale and grow. Mindi serves in the Idaho Air National Guard as the human resource advisor for the 124th Fighter Wing, providing organizational development and learning to over 1,200 airmen. Mindi serves as a business consultant for Idaho Partners for Good, guiding nonprofits towards achieving successful outcomes. Welcome to the panel, Mindi.
Thank you, Lavanya. Good morning. Afternoon, actually.
Yes, afternoon. Next, I'm going to introduce Jimmy. Jimmy Halliburton founded the Boise Bicycle Project in 2007 to combine his lifelong commitment to provide support for underserved communities, his passion for cycling, and devotion to preserving open spaces. BBP has successfully partnered with many nonprofits across the state to donate 6,500 plus bicycles, and that's a lot. So 3 cheers to you, Jimmy, to children from low-income families. Jimmy's work as a community leader and skilled collaborator created several national award-winning programs, helping hundreds of incarcerated women and men reconnect with their community. He has successfully passed statewide bicycle safety laws and initiatives and created working relationships between neighborhood associations and ACHT, building walkable and bikeable neighborhoods. Jimmy inspired the partnership between Boise and Ada County, systematically eliminating the Treasure Valley of goat heads by creating the 6,000 participant strong Boise Goat Head Fest. Jimmy is also a member of the Boise City Council, representing Seat 3 in Idaho. Jimmy, welcome. And we really appreciate you taking time today because tomorrow is also their huge Christmas getaway and there's lots going on at Boise Bicycle Park.
Yes, there's a bustle of activity going on behind this door, and after tomorrow, we'll actually be at 8,000 bicycles donated.
Wow, that's awesome. That's fabulous. So I would like to begin the panel today by talking about the business and nonprofit sector's response to the pandemic. Jimmy, let's start with you. During this year, what were your moments of crisis? What happened? Jimmy, can you hear us?
He just froze up, I think.
Yeah, I think his screen froze. Oh, he's back. Jimmy, can you hear me? Okay, I think we'll get back to Jimmy when he gets back to us. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and Russ, can we begin with you?
Sure. Let's see, Jimmy's back. Did you want me to answer the same question?
I actually had a different question for you.
Okay.
So, Russ, I wanted to ask you that my question for you was that the pandemic kind of elevated some nonprofits while effectively shuttering others. What are some of the characteristics that help a nonprofit thrive during a pandemic? And how have you seen nonprofits pivot during this year?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. I think some of the characteristics that help a nonprofit in a pandemic are the same ones that help it to be successful just in the old regular world we used to know. And I think a lot of that comes from engaging the community or its audience or its members in an ongoing way. And I also think that if it has an earned income component beyond just simply having a unearned income, you know, donations or grants or what have you, I think those items are absolutely critical. I think most of the nonprofits that are I don't know that any nonprofits are doing hugely well through the pandemic, but those are that are at least treading water, which is, I think, is almost as much as you can do, are doing that because they've engendered great loyal followings. They know how to be scrappy, and they're carrying on.
Is there anything you've seen nonprofits do in particular that's different that they did successfully to cope with the pandemic?
Oh, I think you will see most everyone trying to, you know, whether you're a nonprofit or a business, everyone's trying to pivot into a space that allows it to get to the other side of this thing. I think mostly what you see nonprofits doing are pivoting to things like this online, as far as actually keeping a connection alive with the community, with their donors, and then as far as fundraising goes, to actually figure out a way in a world where you can't really have physical events anymore. How do you reach out and connect with those people who'd like to support you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's a very important point, having that connection going with the community and letting them know what's happening with you and your followers. I'm going to check if Jimmy is back with us. I don't see him. So I'm going to shift gears and talk to Mindi. Mindi, so I wanted to talk to you about resilience. That's been something that's been talked about a lot during this year.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about resilience and how do we really bounce back in 2021?
Yeah, so just being in the military for the last 21 years, resiliency is actually something that gets ingrained in us from day one. When we start basic training and we start to navigate through our careers in the military, that's part of our basic fundamentals of learning how to be resilient, because in the military, we experience pandemic-like things that happen all the time, where we have to pick up and move and go to a different location, or we get sent overseas in harm's way, and we're doing a lot of sacrificing and just trying to be resilient. And, you know, a lot of what I've experienced this year I felt before, and that was 9/11. That was when I was active duty at Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport, Louisiana, just shy of my 23rd birthday, just in the military, less than 2 years, and the world was being attacked. And we actually, at Barksdale, we had President Bush came to our base, first from Florida, left there and came straight to our base. He flipped our base upside down in 15 minutes, made a statement to the country, and then he was gone with a case of bananas. And our resiliency tactics had to be put into gear. And so what we really focused on, and as I've done reflection this year and looking back at, what were some of the things that helped me to bounce back in that time of uncertainty and unknown and not knowing, when the war would end, which we're still fighting right now today. This is the longest war we've ever been in. Is the community over terrorism, and coming together as a community of military members and just putting, rolling up our sleeves and getting the work done, putting in the long hours, getting our bombers up and gone and put onto a bear base. Whatever we had to do, we made certain that we were ready to ready to bounce back. And figure out how we were going to take care of each other was important. You've seen a lot of community over COVID. And I think a lot of that, a lot of people are relying on their communities. They're relying on their community of people. They're relying on their community of families. They're relying on their nonprofit space. And those executive directors are coming together more so to help each other versus, just focusing on our own nonprofits, which has been really great. And really embracing the words agility and grit. Flexibility is something we have to practice all day, every day right now. And something a term we use in the military is flexibility is the key to air power. Again, so, we have to be able to pivot and be able to continue on. And retaliate was something we did, with 9/11 too. We fought back, we went over, we dropped bombs. We let people know that we weren't going away and that they couldn't, they couldn't scare us away. And I think that same concept applies for for nonprofits. We have to retaliate, because if we continue with our nonprofit space, we won't actually be serving the community the way that we need to, and the community won't have us to serve them, and they need us right now. This year is showing that we need nonprofits are so important, and at the same time they're the ones that are suffering a lot right now. And so there's a lot of ways to bounce back, but there's, those few things that I've been focusing on with the Chamber of Commerce and reaching out and creating those connections and just being agile and being able to go with the flow and being able to not just give up and fight back and continue on into 2021.
Thank you, Mindi. Jimmy, do we have you back with us?
I think I'm stable again. I think I got my 8,000 bikes comment in and then just dropped the mic and peaced out for a while. But I think I'm back. I'm on my phone now, so I got rid of the laptop and I'm on the phone. Should be good.
Okay, so let's hope you stay with us. Mindi put it perfectly, saying nonprofits are really in the spotlight right now. So tell us a little bit about what happened with Boise Bicycle Project this year. What were your moments of crisis? What happened?
For sure. And I might just go back a little bit further. The Boise Bicycle Project, we started really in 2007 and immediately went into the recession. And so we started during a time where things were really falling apart for a lot of people. And what we did best, I think, was just show up and allow people to join and to help and to make them feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. And when other things weren't going wrong, they could still be part of something right. So that was how we were born, how we started here at the Boise Bicycle Project. So as we sort of saw this pandemic coming this year, part of it was just a little bit familiar because we understood the role that we were going to have to play in helping people get through this. And one of the things that we've experienced from the very beginning is like nothing quite ever goes according to plan in the nonprofit sector. You're always short of time, resources, people, you know, you name it, and you figure out ways to still push through and overcome. And a lot of times you just do that by showing up again and again and again. And even when you don't have anything else, if you can at least show up, then maybe you can figure something out and learn a little bit more for the next time. And so we took that mindset as we were really approaching this pandemic, and we really started to see like, what's the absolute worst case scenario that we're going to go into as an organization? What's the worst case scenario for our community, and who is going to be in the absolute most need? Who no longer needs our services and who needs them the most? And that's really the decision that we had to make. We had to cut a lot of programs. We had to get rid of a lot of the things that we really enjoyed. And we had to focus on vulnerable community members who we knew we're going to lose transportation. We're going to not have enough you know, funding to make car payments, to pay for gas, who may not feel safe taking public transportation. And that our role was to keep them moving and keep them connected to the community the best that we could. And we knew that if we could focus on just that one thing, if we were successful in that one area, that we were doing our part. And I think a lot of nonprofits had to do the same thing. They had to really evaluate every single thing that they were doing and say, okay, what do we need to be doing right now in this moment to make sure that everybody is okay by the time that we emerge? And I think the really cool thing about nonprofits right now, and kind of speaking to that resilience, is a lot of us, I feel like we feel like we've helped people get through a really hard time. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And now we know that our opportunity is to help people emerge, to help people get back involved in the community when the time comes, to make sure that they have the resources to get back on their feet. And so it's an exciting time to be in the nonprofit sector. And I think that this is really when we're needed the most.
Thank you, Jimmy. Russ, I'm going to get back to you on something that Jimmy said, that is focusing, getting that laser focus and consolidating all your resources and trying to do what you do best. And we've also been reading a lot about the new normal. So do you think this is going to become the new normal? What will be the new normal in 2021?
Oh, heck. You know, focus has never been one of my strengths. I'm all over the place. So, you know, you've got a continuum of people who are everything from like super laser focused to me who like plays bets all over the place, as far as maybe starting or being a catalyst for many different things. Then hopefully folks like Jimmy and others can, you know, be laser focused within those things. So I'm probably the wrong person to talk about focus as a strength. I'll let others do that. As far as like I have absolutely no clue what 2021 is going to look like. I think I've got my fingers crossed like everyone else. I think everything is permanently changed. I think we're all going to have to be agile and adroit. I think we're going to have to try and figure out, like, I think my largest concern right now is how do we pull our community together and get it to heal, because I think this has revealed some just stark and troubling divisions among the citizens of Boise and the Treasure Valley. And so that's the one that I'm probably going to be putting my limited amount of focus on this next year in different ways, is like what role can I play, and those that I hang with to try and bring our community back together.
Yes, very well said, Russ. And we just saw over the last 2 days what happened with the Anne Frank Memorial. So yes, lots of things going on. And Jimmy, I'm going to flip that question and look at the other side of 2020. What did you celebrate in 2020? What went right?
You know, I think it's going to be fun for people to think back about what those bright times were, because they did happen. And when they did, they were really, really meaningful, probably more meaningful than normal. And I can think of a couple of specific circumstances with BBP. We used to put on the 6,000 person event, Boise Goat Head Fest. It was this massive bicycle parade, shoulder to shoulder, in costume, riding on bicycles, going back to a park, dancing together, doing all these wonderful things. And we knew that that was absolutely impossible for us to do this year. So we completely reinvented the entire festival, where people were basically on their bikes and riding to all sorts of different parts of town, starting at their own houses at the exact same time. And we were able to still give people an experience that was fun and different than their day-to-day routine, something that felt safe, something that didn't feel like they were being pushed into a situation that didn't feel comfortable or forced to make a bad decision. But they were able still to do something different and something that felt a little bit more normal. And we've had people follow up with us since then, continuing to tell us how important just that one day was, that we didn't give up, that we didn't just do a virtual event, but we still found a way to do something analog outside, get on your bicycle, sweat a little bit, and still maintain distances from other people. We did the same thing for our appreciation party this year. We did an outdoor bike-in movie where everybody was spaced about 20 feet away from each other. And we had people raise their hands if this was the first major event that they'd been to in the year. And this was in October. And almost every single person in the audience raised their hand. And so I think that there's so many exciting parts of 2020 where somebody found a way to do something a little bit different and a little special and really interesting. And people will remember those moments going forward. They'll remember the people who found a way, like Russ, to do things like City of Good, or the Boise Farmers Market, who still found a way to support our local food network and get food to people safely and allow people to volunteer and feel like they were part of something bigger. The Boise Farmers Market created a community this year that nobody will ever forget. So there's going to be some really special moments that stick with people, and the organizations and the folks who found a way to still create community during a time when we were really isolated. I don't think people will ever forget it.
Rightly said, Jimmy. I don't think this is a year any one of us will ever forget. Mindi, I'm going to switch to you. You've talked about how this was like war, and how we need to look at resilience and grit and focusing on being stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Going into 2021, if there are the top 3 things that all of us should be focusing on, what do you think that should be?
I would definitely say your ability to be able to connect with your emotional intelligence. This year has been, I work a lot with emotional intelligence, and I can honestly say that I probably would have had more moments of frustration this year if I hadn't been so committed to my emotional intelligence journey that I've been on over the last couple of years. Take time to focus on yourself and learn from, how you feel you might have performed as a leader given the pandemic and the certain situations, and reflect on that and learn from that and grow from that. Because really, this is the best time to be learning about yourself, is when you're put to that test and you're put to that pressure of having to pivot and change, and lots of bad news and having to shut things down. Right. And so I think we could really do a lot of reflection and learning a lot about ourselves, and being okay with the bad and the good, and figuring out how to move forward into 2021. I think as far as resiliency, we've worked very hard this year, and I think a lot more people have put in a lot more time into their organizations, because we've been working overtime to try to figure out how to pivot and address and figure out. So ensuring that we're taking time for ourselves in 2021 and being able to tell ourselves that it's going to be okay and we're going to get through this. And, the shock and awe, I think, should stay in 2020. And when we move into 2021, we can get more to our new normal and our contingency plan, because I know that I plan to leave the shock and awe in 2020 and moving forward to looking at all of the good things. There's so many opportunities that happened in 2020 that came out of a pandemic too, as well. And, sometimes we just need to be shaken up a little bit and being taken out of our comfort zone. Now, this was a little extreme, definitely a little extreme, but I think, it gives us a great opportunity to be able to to reflect on it, on how we were so maybe in our normal way of doing things. And it's allowing for us to find that creative side and that innovative side to create new human experiences, like Jimmy mentioned, with that, that bicycle event. That was a new human experience that people are having. And so continuing on with those.
Thank you, Mindi. I'm going to now pivot to a different topic, equity. Again, equity is something that has really come up this year because COVID-19 didn't look at people whether they were brown or black or rich or poor. It just didn't discriminate. So that kind of has shifted a lot of things around who gets affected by COVID and who doesn't. Going forward into, and I'm going to open this question to anybody in the panel who would like to answer. Going forward into 2021, how do you think nonprofits are going to look at the question of equity? Is it going to be different, or how are we going to approach it differently? Anybody, Russ or Jimmy?
I'll jump in and go first. There's a Maya Angelou quote that says, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. And I think that this is a year where a lot of us learned some stuff that maybe we didn't want to know, saw some stuff that we didn't want to see, began to see a reality that exists that maybe most of us don't have to experience a lot of times. And we can't unsee that. We can't unexperience, some of the things that happen. And if we don't change, then we're really not doing our job. We need to make sure that we're taking those steps. I think that especially in the nonprofit sector, we've seen the way that the pandemic has really harmed our more vulnerable communities first. And we've seen the vulnerable states that they're in. And that if we don't take steps to address equity within our own organizations, that we can't necessarily take steps to do that in a larger circle. So I think that we all have to be figuring out, now that we know what we know, what are we going to do? And if people aren't moving in that direction, I think that they'll be left behind. I think it's a moment now where this is the future. And if you're not moving that way, things are not going to be the same that they were in the past.
Russ, anything? You're on mute.
Mindi, I think you were going to go.
Oh, go for it, Russ. It's all
Okay.
you have.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Jimmy said. I think that externally, nonprofits have always done a pretty good job as far as equity goes, because that's what they're born to do. And where the real work to be done is, I guess, internally, organizationally, because oftentimes we don't look at our own organizations first as far as figuring out ways that we can be more equitable, whether that's racial equality, whether that's gender equality or what have you. And, you got to take care of your own house first. And then beyond that, and the audiences or customers you serve, you have to get out there in the community, engage with businesses and government, and figure out exactly what we can do. Because Jimmy's so right, and I think it's no surprise to anyone here, man. The veneer got ripped off big time this year. Veneer, or even a scab to make it a little bit more painful. I think a lot of us got to see things about ourselves personally and professionally, about our friends in our community, that's just so tremendously unsettling. And now we just can't go back to the prior way. We actually need to roll up our sleeves and get to work on it and affect some positive change.
Mindi?
Yeah. And I'll expand a little bit more just on what Russ had mentioned. When you're looking at your organizations, I think because our business models might potentially be changing in our nonprofits, we're also going to have to look at our team and the skill set that they have, and figuring out, what did we pivot with in 2020, and what does the new model look like for our nonprofit space or our businesses, in figuring out where is the skill set within the people that you have, and is there some restructuring that may have to happen in order to be able to still meet the needs of the nonprofit with the talent and the skills that you have within your organization. Because one thing that something that I focus on a lot within my my business and consulting business, or consulting and coaching business, is diversity and inclusion, and looking at the unique perspectives and personalities and thoughts and knowledge and the diverse people that we have within ourselves, within our teams, and looking at what can they bring to the fight, what can they bring to the team, what can they bring to the nonprofit, and how can we provide equity so that we're maximizing everybody's potential within our team dynamics to help us move forward within our nonprofit center, so that we can thrive and grow and still, you know, still continue on. Equity is something that, you know, it can be controversial, because it's like it's a number, or you're placing a value on somebody. But when you start talking about value, you start talking about what values them, and what values align with the organization and the nonprofit center. So yeah, I think there's a lots of opportunity, again, to just really relook at everything. If you did strategic planning in the beginning of this year, right before COVID, you might have to go back to the strategic plan drawing board, unfortunately, and relook at everything, because things have shifted a little bit. And if you don't take that time now to do that before going into the next year, then you'll be behind, and you certainly don't want to be behind in these times.
Absolutely. Mindi, you've put it right. We've just had so many changes this year that it's been, I don't have words to describe this year. And all of us have had to push ourselves so much this year. I'm going to ask this again to open this up to the panel. What have you done to push yourself and keep going in between everything that was going on this year?
I guess I'll go. I look at times of chaos and crisis as being fantastic opportunities to shape change. I think that's when people are open to new ways of doing things. So, you know, to give you a little bit of a driving metaphor, it's counterintuitive. I think that when you're driving up in the mountains and you come into turn, and if you got a standard transmission, you know, the way you want to handle that turn is to downshift and actually put a little gas to the thing and speed up as opposed to slow down. So that's what I've tried to do. And you know, the way I guess that actually takes tangible shape is to reach out and try and help other people, whether that's through mentoring, whether that's through donations, whether that's towards catalyzing different sorts of efforts. So the way I've gotten through it is to, I guess, go into overdrive in a big way. And I feel like it served me well, but it's also taken quite a personal toll as well. It's been a tough damn year. And yeah, I live on a small farm, so oftentimes I get to retreat to nature. And you know, that's one of the great things about living in Boise, regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not. So I think that's one thing that I try to emphasize for everyone is get outside. You know, we're so fortunate. I can't imagine what, say, like last April and May, it must have been like to be in Manhattan and be shoved inside a tiny apartment for a couple of months. So those are the little tricks of the trade I've tried to employ.
Thank you, Russ. Yeah, I definitely agree. Living in Boise, we get a beautiful view of the mountains, and we can be in the foothills. It's beautiful. So also the other thing I wanted to ask the panel is December is also the time when we make our to-do lists. And I am guessing this year to-do lists are going to be a lot different. If there's one thing you recommend, a podcast or a movie or a book to watch, what would that be? Mindi?
I would say, and I talked about it already, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, such an amazing book. I am a certified trainer with Talent Smart, and I deliver emotional intelligence assessments through them and with the Guard and with the community and with the corporate companies. And I have found that this year, people have said that if I wasn't actually going on an emotional intelligence journey or talking about this material, I probably wouldn't have been as successful with my emotions as I have been, because really emotions are the foundation of every being of our entire day. I'm sure that just in the 45 minutes we've been on this call, everybody's experienced a lot of different emotions just in the 45 minutes, and they're sneaky and they come when you least expect them in high forms. But that has been really a great book. And I've been finding myself going back to the strategies that they have in there. They have 66 strategies that help put some things in place that you can work on. And if one's not working, then I'm trying another and continuing on. So that's been a wonderful book for me this year.
Thank you,
I've
Mindi.
got one that's just a little bit different. It's the Idaho Field Guide for Birds. Is the book that I would recommend, and here's why. I'm reading a lot of other books at the same time. This book, the Field Guide, gets me outside and moving at a really slow pace. It has me looking at bushes, at trees, at streams, like going places. Just to be still and to sit. And a lot of times, like when you go looking for a bird, you don't find one until you sit down for a while. And then after you sit down, 2 minutes has passed, 3 minutes has passed. And then all of a sudden, like you start seeing things moving or you hear a noise and then you see it and like you flip through your book and you find it. And the rest of the world kind of goes away for a little bit. It's kind of like reading a fantasy book at the same time. I used to be like a snowboarder. I would like do all sorts of adrenaline things. And sometimes I'm a little embarrassed that now that I go birding. But similar to Mindi, investing in yourself emotionally is a great thing to be doing. Getting outside and recognizing that, nature still exists, that it's out there, that there's a bigger picture, I think is so important. That field guide for Idaho birds, you can actually find it on the Peregrine Fund, which is a local nonprofit. They've got a great online store, and I'd recommend that you purchase it from there. And that way you can support a local nonprofit and get your bird book out there. I usually go bicycle bird watching to just add a little extra bonus to it.
Stopping to smell the roses. Absolutely. My kids always want to look at every bug and every rock and every piece of grass. So I think I might as well buy the book and read it while they investigate their bugs. Russ, anything from you?
Yeah, I'll give a couple. A podcast that I'm quite enamored of right now is called Against the Rules. It's by Michael Lewis. He's a very noted author. So he wrote like Moneyball and The Blind Side and The Big Short and what have you. So super talented. And this season's podcast is focused on all sorts of coaching, everything from athletic coaching to mind coaching and everywhere in between. So that's the podcast I've been listening to. And then just for fun, Deacon King Kong by James McBride. It's a work of fiction, just spectacular writing, and it takes place in 1969 against a backdrop of a lot of racial unrest and what have you, and it's an amazing story. So those are the two I'd offer up.
Thank you, Russ. I see a question from Blossom, and I'm going to ask that to the panel. Mindi, you talked about emotional intelligence for yourself. How have all of you focused on or helped look at the emotional intelligence of your organization or team?
Well, we definitely, we have to have more empathy right now. And empathy is one of the big components of emotional intelligence, being able to connect and relate and just be able to not hold judgment against people for what they're experiencing, because one thing that emotional intelligence does is it allows for you to not force your own emotions on other people or force other people to have emotions that you have, and vice versa, not allowing for their emotions to become part of yours, to then where you carry them and you hang on to them and then they show up in places that you don't want them to be. And so empathy has been really big because everybody's experiencing something different, and that changes on a daily on what they could be experiencing. And so just having a lot of empathy for the team and being a lot more understanding. And I thought I was before, but this year I have found myself just really truly understanding what empathy really is, and not holding judgment. Because our brains are hardwired that way. Unfortunately, that's just our human nature. We initially go to judgment, and emotional intelligence helps to organically and naturally get to a space where you don't automatically assume and judge, and you get more to being open-minded and being more empathetic.
Thank you, Mindi. And on that note of emotional intelligence, I am going to open this up to the audience for questions. You can speak, or you're welcome to speak, or also use the chat function to send in your questions.
I've got a question, until we get another one. I'll put this one to Jimmy, which is, it's almost 2021. In 2031, what will bicycling look like in the community of Boise?
Well, thank you, Russ, for that question. I think Russ knows that I always had a vision that Boise has the potential to be the bicycle capital of America. And to me, that really means a place where everybody, regardless of income, has access to a bicycle, have safe places to ride, and have the ability to ride together. Whether you choose to ride a bicycle or you have no other transportation options, that we find ways to ride together. One of the things that we did 50 years ago that was one of the best investments that our city and our community ever did was we created the Boise Greenbelt, and we started that effort. And that was a citizen-led group who got that effort started. And it's hard to imagine what our city would look like without the Greenbelt and the impact that that's had on so many different areas. And when we started that, everyone said, that's impossible. You'll never be able to do it. It's way too much work. There's easements, there's private property, the river's a mess, all sorts of different things. But somebody did it anyway. And what happened was it transformed our city. It transformed our river. Our river used to be a dumping ground where we would, meat packing plants would dump all their sewage into there. There were cars in the river. The beautification of the Boise River happened because of the Boise Greenbelt largely. We have a tremendous opportunity to honor that tradition and that legacy of the Boise Greenbelt with our canal pathways that go all throughout Boise. So off of the Boise River spawn all these different canal pathways that irrigate our incredible farming and rural community, and they go to every single corner of this city, and they connect from Boise all the way over to Ontario. So one of the things, Russ, that I envision is creating bike paths along those canals, because those canals already have roads alongside of them, maintenance roads. And so we already sort of have some infrastructure there to build on, whether that would be paved or gravel, who knows, whatever that community would think. But this is an equity issue. Back to your question earlier, Lavanya, is that if you live close to the Boise foothills, or if you live close to the Greenbelt, you've got a really great place to ride. If you live in South Boise, you probably didn't escape during the pandemic and go for a hike in the foothills. And so we need to make sure that no matter where you live in this town, that you have the ability to have access to outside and the open space and a safe place to walk and a safe place to ride, both for recreation, but for emotional health as well. And so, Russ, that's what I envision our city looking like. It's still the bicycle capital of America, and it's going to be that way because it doesn't matter what part of town you live in, you're going to have a safe place to ride away from traffic that will connect you to other places in the community. And maybe I would ask you the same question back, Russ. What's your vision?
Oh, wow. How could I expound upon what you just so eloquently stated, Jimmy? All of that, bicycles can save the world. They've been around for 150 years or what have you, and then everything from an environmental benefit to a community connection aspect to a physical health to an economic savings. I think it's if we can truly become immeasurably so America's bicycle capital, then we'll be well positioned to have a fantastic community and be economically competitive going forward.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I've got a question for all three of you. So we've all felt the heat, we've all felt the chaos, we've all felt the disruption. In 2021, despite all of the things that have lined up, what are you going to do anyway? Despite all the challenges, what are you going to do anyway?
Well, I think I'll go ahead and start with that because, starting the Idaho Veterans Chamber of Commerce this year has created a little bit of controversy just in the chamber world. And I know I can understand that and I can appreciate that because, the chambers have been affected significantly over this last year with their memberships and, they're trying to pivot too as well. And so the thought of veterans, that are part of the Chamber of Commerce with their cities coming to our chamber and losing that has been something that's been of concern. And so we're going to continue anyway and continue with the Idaho Veterans Chamber of Commerce because our vision and our goal is to collaborate with chambers and to be able to promote and enhance and create more opportunities for them to be part of chambers. Because one thing that we recognized with our Veterans Chamber of Commerce is that we want to primarily reside within the civilian community to connect our civilian veterans that are in the community with the veteran resources and the support that they can be maximizing on. And so we're gonna continue on with our chamber because it's such an important mission that we have, and it's a need, and it's filling a gap that we do have within our communities.
Blossom, I've got one thing that we're going to do specifically, and then a hope. The one thing that I know that we're going to do is we're partnering with Idaho Partners for Good to work on a strategic plan that we hope to have finished or in some sort of state by August. And it took a little bit of a pushing for my board to be excited about the idea of this being the right time to do a strategic plan. I think after listening to Mindi and Russ, you'll already have heard that this may be the best time to be doing a strategic plan. We've seen gaps in our communities. We know that we all have issues to address with equity and anti-racism in our own organizations. And what better time to be examining what we've done for the past several years and be looking into the future and say, what's next? What are the gaps that we weren't filling? And what's something new, knowing that there's going to be a lot of new opportunity in the community itself. So that's one thing that I'm really excited about doing. And the great part, I think, for BVP and partnering with Idaho Partners for Good is that there's scheduled time on the calendar already in the Google Calendar that we're meeting to do these things. And when you schedule and you set aside time to do it, then you're committed to doing it. And you're not like, oh yeah, at some point we're going to do our strategic plan this year. It's like, nope, the dates are already on the calendar. It's already in the plan. All we have to do now is show up and lean in and kind of embrace what we get to do. So that's one thing that I'm looking forward to that we're going to do anyway, even though it seems like kind of a strange time to do it. My hope is that at some point in 2021, there'll be an opportunity to hug a stranger again. And that's something I think that I'm thinking about a lot right now because our Holiday Kids Bike giveaway is going on. We've got volunteers who are outside. They're working hard to get these bikes ready for these kids. They're coming out of the woodwork to volunteer for the first time that they have in 9 months at BBP. And you just kind of want to go up and you give somebody a hug. And at some point, that's probably going to happen for each one of us. And the emotional experience that that's going to be is just going to be such a celebration. And we know that that's probably going to happen in 2021. And how exciting it is that is on the horizon, and that moment is going to be part of our future.
I'll briefly talk about City of Good and what we're hoping to do in the next year. So we have 3 benefits we try to affect. One is to feed kids from low-income schools who otherwise wouldn't have food to eat over the course of a weekend. We're also using restaurant workers to create those meals, and we are buying our produce and other healthy foods from local farmers, ranchers, and food producers. And so what we're looking to do there is to actually increase the impact we have in our community, improve the programs. We only got started last spring, and I think we've delivered 20,000 meals so far. And then once we get that template kind of nailed down, we're hoping to be able to expand that to other communities in Idaho.
I see a question, or I think it's rather a comment from Harley, and I think it's for you, Jimmy. It says, in the next 24 months, visioning to 2030, recycling e-bike batteries can eliminate waste, improve the environment, and provide employment opportunities for people who struggle to earn a living. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just the mention of e-bike, and it crossed my mind when Russ brought that up a little bit earlier. We're about to see a massive bicycle boom across the entire country, and we'll see it especially in Boise because we already have that culture here. One of those things is e-bikes. We expect to see a lot of those things. It's a really exciting thing that we have e-bikes out there that maybe allow people who weren't able to bicycle before, or who aged out of being able to ride a regular bike or live on a hill or live too far away. So it is going to create these opportunities. It's also going to create these massive obstacles, because I can still repair an old Schwinn from 1950 and cruise down the road on it, and it will last another 50 years. These e-bikes won't do the same, both the batteries and the bicycles themselves. They're not going to be as sustainable as the bikes were in the past. And so we've got some challenges ahead of just how the bicycle community and industry is going to look. It's going to both open opportunities, but it's going to create some problems as well. One of the things I anticipate in happening in 2021 and beyond is that we're going to have such a huge desire to get off of virtual things and get back to analog, get back to the basics. I think that bird watching, fly fishing, bicycle riding, like all of these things, hiking in the hills, like they're already happening. They're making this tremendous comeback of people just wanting to go and get in touch with nature. And so although there'll be a huge e-bike future, I think that there's going to be a big desire just to be at one and moving at a pace and feeling a connection to the world around you. And your basic bicycle is still going to be on top when it comes to that.
So that kind of got me thinking about a question that I wanted to ask the panel, which was, is 2021 going to require a different skill set? Or are there skills that we never really focused on till now? Like, for instance, emotional intelligence. Are there other skills that we need to develop or kind of look out for in 2021? Russ?
Oh, wow. What skills, I think it's a double thing. It's getting out yourself and realizing that you're going to be able to gain by helping others, but by the same token, getting inside yourself and actually being reflective and being able to take those reflections to heart, and then to extend those back out into the community again. So it's kind of one of those interesting things. We've all been forced to whether we're shuttered inside our houses in a small space, whether we're distant from our friends, our families, our coworkers, or what have you, we've all forced to be turned inside. I think we're starting to get comfortable with that in some ways, maybe that we haven't previously, and then we need to take that inner strength and figure out a way to take it out into the community.
And I would say I've learned a lot about technology. I'm not a tech savvy person at all this year, and I've picked up some new vocabulary words such as you're muted, you're not muted, can you mute yourself? And, I'd like to unlearn some of that stuff because I'd really like to get back to human connection. When you talk, you actually can hear the person again when they're speaking. But, I don't see that technology is actually going to go away completely. I think there's going to be some varying degree of hybrid communication that we're going to use just as a standard. There is some conveniences with technology because it does save time and drive time, not having to drive to meetings. However, hopefully we haven't gone too far down that path where we're so used to technology that that's the way that will continue on in the future. But I would say also with just technology and social media and marketing platforms and coding, that's taking a big boom because we're having to communicate more on our social media platforms and using our websites to be able to communicate information. And so I think there's going to be a need for that in the future. And so might be part of your strategic planning of putting on there some of that skill set on the technology side, because we will still have that in the future.
Yeah, I think Mindi hit the nail on the head there. I think, regardless of whether or not, we're going to start doing in-person meetings or if people will still continue to meet on Zoom, we're still going to need that technology to activate people. Even if it is in person and more analog activities, the technology is going to have to get people excited about it, aware about it, in the first place. And I think that there's going to be some really new and interesting ways that we do that. The other skill set, I think that in the nonprofit sector, especially that we're going to have to get better at, really is empathy, deep empathy. At BBP, I can tell you that one of the things that we realize that we're not doing a good enough job at is that we don't truly understand the obstacles that the community that we serve face. And we haven't truly taken the time to understand those obstacles. And an example would be, so we work with the prisons, and while people are incarcerated, we teach a lot of the women how to work on bicycles. They fix bikes that we donate to kids. Once they've fixed 15 bicycles, that earns them a bicycle so that by the day that they get released, there's a bicycle waiting for them. They're ready to go. And so they've got transportation, they've got a skill set, they've got the ability to fix their own kids' bikes. It's this wonderful program that we love, they love. We have no idea what happens after they get out of prison and they get on these bikes and they start riding them around. And if they really are creating the impact that we think that they are, what other barriers they're running into after they're released. And we haven't necessarily taken the time to get a hold of them to truly understand the impact that their bikes may or may not be making afterward. And that's on us. And so I think nonprofits, we need to really be doing a better job at saying, okay, we're solving the immediate need, but how are we solving the long-term need? And are we going beyond, just the basics and really extending to, do we have the desired long-term impact that we hope we're creating? And if we're not asking them, if we're not actively engaging with them, I can try to come up with all the answers in the situations, but I'll never know.
Jimmy, I think Johanna has a question for you, and she asks, is there still assistance needed this weekend for BBP?
For the bike giveaway tomorrow, I think we're looking pretty good. Almost all of our volunteer shifts are filled. You can go to our website and see if there's any shifts that are remaining. We're asking people not show up if they're not assigned to one of those shifts, because we do have it so regimented to make sure that we can do it safely, distanced, all these different types of things. I think one of the best things, Johanna, you've helped us already. And there's so many people who've helped BBP in really incredible ways. And I think one of the things that you deserve is to, if you can't come down that day, that you still look at the pictures, that you still engage and really take note of the impact that you've contributed to in a big way, in a small way, in any way whatsoever. And know that this bicycle is just the first step for these kids. And now we have to keep those bicycles repaired. Now we have to create safer streets for them to ride. And so if there isn't a volunteer shift that day, still watch and see the pictures come out, listen to the stories that we put out there. We're going to try really hard to do that for those who can't come down, because the journey's just beginning for these kids.
I'm going to ask another question to our panel to kind of round it all off. If you can describe 2021 and 2022, and you have just one word, what would be that word for 2020, and how would you describe 2021? Russ?
2 words, or I'll make it a compound and grammatically incorrect. That would be human connection.
For 2021?
Yes.
And for this year?
Wow.
Mindi?
I would say shock and awe from 2020, and then I would say contingency plan for 2021, because I think a lot of our, none of us, I mean, businesses, nonprofits, just personal, we never really planned or prepared for this. And so now we have to not only dissect and unpack what happened in 2020, but we have to figure out how to have a better contingency plan in place for nonprofits for the future in the event that this happens again in the future, or any type of something that impacts our business, and think of those risks that we might have in the way that we do our operations today.
Jimmy?
For 2020, it would be thank you. I think that this is a year where we have all made unbelievable sacrifices, more than we probably ever thought that we would make. And I think that that's hard to celebrate, but it's something that it should be celebrated, that despite all the struggles, not everybody always being on board with the same thing, everybody made some sacrifices. And so I think thank you for 2020. I don't want to say thank you to 2020. I would say something more like screw you 2020, but thank you to all the people out there. And then for 2021, it would just be hopeful. I think that we've got the opportunity to emerge in a really, really beautiful way. And again, I go back to that first moment where I know I'll be able to hug a stranger again. And I think that we will all have that experience where we'll be able to take a deep breath of fresh air. We'll get to see some people that we haven't seen in a long time, and we'll understand how or why that's so important.
Thank you, Jimmy. And on that note of hope, I want to ask if anybody else in the audience has any questions or comments. Okay, if not, any last words from our panel? Okay.
I
just want to say thank you
Go
to
ahead.
everybody, and job well done, Lavanya. So
Thank you.
yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Will. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Blossom to talk a little bit about the work we are doing in 2020 and the upcoming workshops for 2021.